I really enjoyed the first Project Warlock. It was a fantastic romp through fairly flat areas, reminiscent of many early DOS-era shooters like Wolfenstein 3D. Playing it again a few weeks ago, I found it to be a bit on the easy side, but I still enjoyed every minute of it. Fast forward a bit, and the same team released Project Warlock 2, a direct sequel. The game was touted as a game that got its inspiration from Doom 64 and Quake, and yes, that is a very accurate way to describe it. But does it hold up to its older brother? Well, let's get to that. Project Warlock 2 takes place over 3 episodes, each with 12 stages. Of course, every one of these 3 episodes features vastly different worlds to run around in, with creatures of all types and sizes inhabiting each area. In addition to this, you play as a different character in each of these episodes as well. These 3 heroes were the proteges of the Warlock in the first game, all out to find a way to defeat their mentor. With that said, these episodes almost feel like 3 different games. Each character has different weaponry, and go up against different enemies. You only have access to the first episode at the start, with the other 2 being locked until you defeat the final boss of each chapter. Once that's done, you are kicked back to the menu and essentially have to start over for the next character. I'm not so sure how I feel about this. Sure, old episodic DOS games were like this, but in the modern day, I kinda like being able to keep all my upgrades as I play through the game. It's not game-breaking though. So when the developers stated that the game was influenced by Quake, they weren't kidding. After just a few minutes of playing the first level, I could see the inspiration. Unlike the original Project Warlock, here, stages are much larger and open, with a lot more verticality designed in the levels. Creatures encountered aren't completely 3D, looking more like sprites from the N64 days. They are also, for lack of a better way to describe it, heavily pixelated. This is one of the things I can't really say I enjoy about Project Warlock 2. The enemies you encounter fail to have the same intricate detail that the original game had, oftentimes just looking like a bland group of colors at a distance. At least when you make them go splat, they explode in the trails of blood that look like they had been taken from, well, blood. Back to the gameplay. Just like most other shooters in this style, you are simply aiming to find the end of the level, typically denoted by a slightly glowing exit sign. There are blue, yellow, and red keys to find to open up specific doors. There are also plenty of treasures and weapons to pick up along the way. Treasures net you experience points, which increases your character's level. Truth be told, I'm not so sure what level ups actually get you. I believe a max health bump and a perk point are granted to you, but I can't say this with absolute certainty, as the game just displays that you leveled up along with what level your character reached. In addition, there are plenty of extra perk points to find. There are 4 types overall: stat boosts, passive points, weapon upgrade points, and magic points. You use each of these bonuses when at the in-between level hubs. These terminals are unlocked at different points in each campaign, to prevent you from becoming completely overpowered right from the start. However, it doesn't take long before you reach that superhuman state. That's because these enemies die within just a few blasts of almost any of your starting weapons. Usually, it won't be long before you find a pistol and a shotgun, which will make short work of the majority of the monsters that you come across, even before you decide on an upgrade for them. However, even with that said, there are some weapons that feel pretty useless. You would think that the quote-unquote heavier weaponry, like a magical ballista, would do devastating damage, but when firing them at the larger enemies, it barely does any more damage than your melee weapon does. This makes using these weapons, with their scarce ammo and all, not all that appealing. Why bother using these powerful firearms when a shotgun is just as effective, or more so? Another reason to not use these slow-firing behemoths is because of the new combo meter. The more chaos that you cause, the higher the meter gets, which in turn has fallen foes drop better power-ups. Also, there are some passive perks that take advantage of keeping a high combo going, such as one that makes you completely invulnerable when you hit combo level 60. At the start of each episode, keeping this gauge high isn't exactly a necessity, but at the end, it does help a bit. Enough with the firearms. How about the magic? There is a much heavier emphasis on magic in Project Warlock 2. Each character gets 3 different abilities, and these skills don't require magic power in order to power them. Instead, you can use them as many times as you want, with a small cooldown being the only reason to not spam them. Some of these skills are definitely more useful than others. Being able to make a phantom double of your gun in a pinch is awesome, as is flinging sharp shards of crystals in a wide arc around you. However, there are also spells that feel somewhat useless, like being able to run faster. For how good these spells are, there had been times where I forgot they were a thing, but I was doing fine without them regardless. But if you were struggling, maybe you wanted to imbue your firearms with magic. After completing a few chapters, you get the opportunity to take a rune mission. For the first character, you can choose ice or fire, and for the second, poison or crystal. Completing these missions may allow your bullets to be magically charged, making them even deadlier. And you may as well start these, because for the most part, these rune challenges are embarrassingly easy. Get 15 headshots with a pistol? Overkill 10 enemies with a shotgun? Come on now. The only weapon I didn't really understand was to get multi-kills with the cannon, which just so happens to not have splash damage, so I'm not even so sure that this is possible. It also stinks that you can't do more than one of these at a time, since they're completed in literal minutes, with the remainder of the stage needing to be finished before you can return to the hub. Speaking of which, there's no way to return to the hub while you are mid-level, and this is a bit of a problem, which brings me to a pretty big pain point with the game. So here's the thing, Project Warlock 2 is a fun game. It's smooth, the levels are much larger, and the combat is solid, but something just feels like it's missing and I can't place my finger on it. Maybe it's because I'm not the world's biggest Quake fan, but the levels feel samey and way too big for their own good. Sure, running through an episode that feels like it belongs in a twisted Wild West setting is cool at first, but after 3 levels of this, you are ready for a change of scenery. Also, there's only so many times I can blast an imp in the face before I'm wishing for a larger variety of enemies. The game also feels a bit buggy at times. Most of the issues I personally encountered were fairly small, such as the larger threats getting stuck on level geometry. The upgraded pistol in episode 2 sometimes fired all 5 rounds at once, and sometimes it fired them one at a time. When using the episode 2 SMG, I ran into times where I could just keep firing and using up ammo, but I didn't actually have to reload until I stopped firing. But there was a pretty gigantic bug I encountered that made me not finish the game, which brings me back to my comment of not being able to return to the hub. What was that bug, you say? Well, let's take the second episode's boss, a large worm. This battle was kind of annoying to begin with, as you had to find the right button to activate a train to smash into the worm, disabling its shield and forcing it to retract back to its home in the roof where it was vulnerable. All the while, lowly minions would keep spawning in the room, creating a never-ending death trap. Well, I killed the worm, but I died at the same time. Come to find out, the game auto-saved right as I killed the worm, so it simply reloaded me at the conclusion of the battle, with the worm already dead. Small problem, the game was supposed to immediately end the episode, show me the conclusion text, and kick me back to the menu with episode 3 unlocked. That, of course, didn't happen. I spent a small amount of time trying to figure out where the level exit was to find out there really wasn't any. And of course, the game does not keep a spare autosave at the beginning of each level. Nor, as I mentioned earlier, is there a way to retreat back to the hub, or even an option to restart the stage from the beginning. So I had to either reload an earlier save, which was about 6 levels prior and 2 hours ago, or start over. I chose neither, and quit the game to come back to it at a later point. So no, I never even got to episode 3. This is a pretty damning bug, but I've read in other user reviews that players were reporting additional soft locking scenarios in chapter 3. I understand that my situation was a bit of a one-off, but really, the game shouldn't have saved until I got back to the menu. I also can't imagine that even with how uncommon this situation probably is, I'm not the only person who has encountered this. I hope this kind of thing, as well as the other more critical issues other players are experiencing, gets patched. But this brings me back to my original gripe. Something just feels off. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's the unfinished feel the game gives me. I could overlook a lot of these gripes, but I have to admit, I couldn't play this game for more than an hour or 2 before wanting to play something else. Another part of the reason I wasn't completely engaged was due to the music. Warlock 1 had some fantastic rocking tunes, and when the metal wasn't blasting in my ear canals, I enjoyed the moody, atmospheric tunes. Warlock 2, again, takes a step back on this front. There are a couple of bangers to enjoy, but they are few and far between. Most of the time, you're just lumbering around these large levels with ambient music. Yes, other FPS shooters have this kind of stuff, even my beloved modern Doom games. I'm not saying I entirely like it though. So yeah, it's a shame that the music of all things took a massive downgrade. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. Well, with the exception of the fantastically done main theme, which was remixed from the original game. That I really did enjoy. So in a nutshell, Project Warlock 2 isn't a bad game, but it doesn't hold a candle to the original. Most of the elements I loved from the first feel like they were sacrificed to make the game in the Quake style. The gore is fun, the combat is smooth, and the upgrades and treasures are plentiful. But the bland level design, the hit or miss magical spells, weapons that don't strike hard, lackluster music, and ho-hum monsters hurt the fun factor. Maybe if you like Quake more than I do, you'll get more enjoyment out of Project Warlock 2, but otherwise, I'd recommend you wait for this one to go on sale before checking it out. Final score? 4 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.